He arrived in Australia as a refugee child, fleeing a war zone in Lebanon with nothing. By the age of 23, he was the supreme commander of one of Australia's most feared outlaw motorcycle gangs. He survived assassination attempts, ran a criminal empire, went to prison, and walked out. Then on Valentine's Day 2018, someone finally succeeded. Mick Hawi was shot dead in a gym car park in broad daylight. But the story of how he got there, from a refugee camp to a courtroom to a parking lot, is one of the most violent, calculated, and relentless rises and falls in Australian criminal history. Mahmoud Mick Hawi was born in Beirut, Lebanon in 1980, into a city tearing itself apart. The Lebanese civil war had already killed thousands and displaced hundreds of thousands more. When Mick was still a young child, his family made the decision that so many Lebanese families made during those years. They fled. They landed in Sydney, Australia, and settled into the modest, working-class life that most refugee families navigated. Mick dropped out of high school at 16 and went to work in his father's spray painting business. By most accounts, he was unremarkable, big for his age, physically imposing, but nothing that would predict what was coming. That changed in 1999, when he was 19 years old and walked through the door of the Comanchero Motorcycle Club for the first time. The Comancheros were already one of Australia's most established outlaw motorcycle clubs when Hawi joined. But Hawi didn't join to follow orders. Within 3 years of becoming a member, he was engineering a takeover. In 2002, he led a group of younger Comanchero members in a brutal, coordinated ambush against the club's founding supreme commander, a man known as Jock Ross. They beat Ross viciously and stripped him of everything that mattered in that world, his club colors and his Harley Davidson. It was a message that left no room for interpretation. Ross was finished. The old guard was finished. By 2003, at just 23 years old, Mahmoud Hawi stood at the front of the room and declared himself the new national president and supreme commander of the Comanchero Motorcycle Club. An entire criminal organization, seized by a man barely old enough to rent a car. Under Hawi's command, the Comancheros expanded their reach across Australia, drugs, violence, territory. And with power came enemies. In 2007, Hawi was sitting in his car outside a Sydney restaurant called Grapper Ristorante when a gunman opened fire. The bullets hit his car's headrest, inches from where his head had been. He walked away. From that moment, Hawi never moved without a bulletproof vehicle. He had survived his first execution attempt, but he understood clearly what the message was. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, the Comancheros' chief rival, had declared war. And what was coming next would happen not in a back alley, but in front of hundreds of witnesses in one of the busiest airports in the country. On March 22, 2009, Hawi and Hells Angels President Derek Wainohu both boarded a flight from Melbourne to Sydney, neither knowing the other was on the same plane. At some point during the flight, words were exchanged. By the time the plane was approaching Sydney, both men had texted their respective gangs, "Get to the arrivals gate, now." What happened next was captured on security cameras and played on Australian television for weeks. At Gate 5 of Sydney's International Terminal, a full-scale brawl erupted in public. Gang members seized metal stanchion poles, The type used to cordon off cues and used them as weapons. In the middle of the chaos, a 29-year-old man named Anthony Zervas, who was associated with the Hells Angels, was beaten to death. A 17-kilogram metal bollard was used to smash his head. Hawi fled the scene in a taxi, stopping briefly to threaten another Hells Angel before disappearing. The footage showed everything. Australia had always maintained a loose tolerance of outlaw motorcycle clubs, a half-romanticized view of them as outlaws who mostly kept to themselves. That ended on March 22, 2009. The public saw what these clubs actually were, and every politician in the country began writing new laws specifically designed to dismantle them. Hawi became Australia's most wanted man almost overnight. When investigators processed the evidence, they found something devastating against him. His DNA, skin flakes, was recovered from beneath Anthony Zervas's fingernails. Zervas had fought back, and in fighting back, he had left biological evidence that would follow Hawi into a courtroom. In 2011, Hawi was convicted of murder in the second degree. He appealed. The legal process ground on for years. In 2014, in a plea arrangement that shocked many Australians, the charge was reduced to manslaughter. Hawi was released on parole in 2015. He walked out of prison into a Sydney underworld that had shifted dramatically during his years inside. More fractured, more violent, and significantly more dangerous for a man with his history and his enemies. Hawi had reportedly been trying to move away from the criminal world after his release. He had a family, a partner, Caroline Gonzalez, whom he had been with since 1995, and 2 children. In February 2018, by most accounts, he was living more quietly. On Valentine's Day, February 14, 2018, Hawi drove to a fitness-first gym in the Rockdale suburb of Sydney. While sitting in his car in the parking lot, he was ambushed. Gunmen approached the vehicle and opened fire. Mahmoud Hawi, who had survived war, survived a coup, survived bullets through his headrest, survived prison, was shot dead in a gym car park at the age of 37. Within hours of his death, his widow went to the home of a property developer she suspected of ordering the hit, a confrontation that ignited a ferocious, media-saturated feud. The underworld cycle had turned again. 2 men were charged with Hawi's murder. In 2020, both were acquitted, a verdict that shocked many who had followed the case. And then the cycle continued, as it always does in this world. One of the acquitted men, Yusuf Nazlioglu, was himself shot dead in 2022. His alleged killer went to trial in 2025. The chain of violence that started with a Lebanese refugee walking into a motorcycle club in 1999 had not stopped. It had simply passed to the next man. Mick Hawi rose higher, faster, and more violently than almost anyone in Australian organized crime history. He survived things that should have killed him. And in the end, the world he built, the enemies he made, the precedents he set, the war he started at a Sydney airport in front of hundreds of witnesses, was exactly the world that killed him. There is no retirement in this life. There is only the next car park.